Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at Julius Caesar by William Alexander. And this session we're looking at Act 4 and Act 5. Yet we have encountered a lot of people who are not terribly impressed with JC. He's a bit full of himself. With even Mark Antony's best mate was telling him, "Look, God, there's some people who don't like you, man," and it's there are some people who don't like him, and Cicero's not a fan, and Brutus and Cassius, they're not fans, and there's a plot probably boiling away here. It's a weird play. We were talking off camera. Eric brought this up last time. I don't know if Eric would like to say more on this a little later on when we get into the chat section of things. But there's an interesting structural thing going on here. Of we start off with the gods last time. Juno turned up, and we're all really high status. And every scene we seem to be introducing characters on a slightly lower social scale as the play's gone on, and it's really interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether in Act 4 and Act 5 it can sustain that progression. But it was a really interesting thing last time that we started off with the Queen of Heaven, and we'd worked our way down all the nobility to the increasing lowering status as we go. We shall see. Today, reading top of the tree, Caesar and Antonius is.
I very much get to be two sides of a coin. It will be interesting. Looking forward to this. Another view of one of the more interesting characters.
Going slightly further down that social scale, reading Brutus and also Nuntius is.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I left my dagger in my other toga.
Reading Cassius and Calphurnia is. Oh, you've just muted yourself. You did a reverse ferret muting there.
Oops. Hi, I'm Desna from Lancaster.
Reading Decius today is also muted.
I'm Tom from Brighton.
And reading the chorus throughout the acts is
Rachael. I feel super prepared to be chorus because I just had a group lament last week in a choral class.
Excellent. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading, the occasional hint as to what the scene we're in is, and I'll read in anything else. We have yet to decide who's going to be Cicero, so I don't know if I'm going to be Cicero. We shall see. I'll figure that out when we get to Cicero. But anyway, till then, Act 4, Scene 1. We have Decius, Brutus, Albinus, as well as Marcus Brutus. Focus on the Brutus, Decius and Brutus, and Cassius, Caius Cassius.
Long looked for time that should the glory yield, which I through Neptune's trustless reign have sought, and through the dust of many a bloody field, as by all dangers worthy to be bought. Thy coming now, those lowering shadows clears, my hopes...
Sorry, I'm just going to pause you there. You're on Act 4, Scene 2.
Oh, sorry. It's one of those days today.
You know, bloody Julius Caesar. He just insists, doesn't he? He just turns up. He's not even in the scene. And he just insists on turning up and going, "Hi, I'm in charge."
Kill him.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think he's asking for it, isn't he?
My apologies. I thought I'd stay in character.
Okay, so we're starting with Decius and then Brutus. Decius Brutus talking to Marcus Brutus with Cassius in attendance.
Dear cousin, Cassius did acquaint mine ears with a design which tossed my mind a space. For when strange news a stranger breath first bears, one should not straight to rash reports give place. I would not then discover what I thought, lest he to trap my tongue a snare had framed, till first with thee I to confer was brought, whom he for patron of this purpose named. One should look well to whom his mind he leaves. In dangerous times when tales by walls are told, men make themselves unnecessarily slaves of those to whom their secrets they unfold.
As Cassius told thee, grieved for Rome's distress, which to our shame in bondage doth remain, we straight intend whatever we profess with Caesar's blood to wash away this stain. Though for this end few sufficient are, to whom their virtue courage doth impart, yet we were loath to wrong thy worth so far as of such glory to give thee no part. Since both this cause, yea, and thy name thee bind, in this adventurous band to be comprised, there needs no rhetoric to raise thy mind to do the thing which thou shouldst have devised.
I thought no creature should know my purpose now, but he who's interested promised mutual cares. Of those to whom one would his secret show, no greater pledge of trust than to know theirs. As when two meet while masked, though most dear friends, with them as strangers no respect takes place, but straight when friendship one of them pretends, the other likewise doth uncloud the face. So as though first I'll know at last be bold, my breast with the same birth long big hath gone, but I to others durst it not unfold, nor yet attempt to compass it alone. But since this course, at which I long did pause, of such great pillars now so strongly stands, whose countenance may give credit to a cause, it hath my heart, and it shall have my hand.
To our designs propitious signs are sent, so that the gods would give us courage thus. For all who ever heard of our intent would willingly engage themselves with us. Let other men discourse of virtuous rites, ours but by action only should be shown. Their speculation is but for such sprites as want of power or courage keeps unknown. In those who virtue view, when crowned with deeds through glory's glass whose beauties long have shined, to be embraced and high desire she breathes, as lodestone's iron so ravishing the mind. What though a number now in darkness lies, who are too weak for matters of such weight? We who are eminent in all men's eyes, let us still hold this height of honour straight.
First, that our faction might be strengthened thus, I laboured much to purchase all their powers. Whom hate to Caesar, love to Rome or us, might make embark in those great hopes of ours. By sickness then imprisoned in his bed, whilst I Ligarius spied whom pains did prick, when I had said with words that anguish bred, in what a time, Ligarius, art thou sick? He answered straight, as I had physic brought, or that he had imagined my design. If worthy of thyself thou wouldst do aught, then Brutus, I am whole and wholly thine. Since he by Caesar was accused of late, he, though absolved, doth still the tyrant hate. Since once endangered by his lawless power, thus of great spirits exasperating spites, heaven of our course the progress doth direct. One inspiration, all our souls' insights, who have advisedly sworn for one effect.
So I with Cicero did confer at length, whom I perceive the present state detests, and though old age diminished hath his strength, in him a will to free his country rests.
That man whose love still to his country shined would willingly the commonwealth restore. Then he, I know, though he conceals his mind, none Caesar more dislikes nor likes us more. Yet to his custody I'll not commit the secrets of our enterprise so soon. Men may themselves be oftentimes not fit to do the things which they would wish were done. He still was timorous, and by age grown worse, might chance to lay our honor in the dust. All cowards must inconstant be a force, with bold designs none fearful breasts should trust. then some of ours should hold their hands still pure, who, ere they be suspected for a space, amidst the tumult may remain secure, and with the people mediate our peace. But who then Tullius fitter for that turn, whose eloquence is used to charm their ears? His banishment they in black gowns did mourn, whom all do in honour for his worth in years.
Those studious wits, which have through dangers gone, would still be out ere that they enter in, who muse of many things, resolve of none, and, thinking of the end, cannot begin. The mind which looks no further than the eye, and more to nature trusts that then unto art, such doubtful fortunes fittest is to try, a furious actor for a desperate part. We have enow, and of the best degree, whose hands unto their hearts to us are true. And if that we seek more, I fear we be to hide too many, if disclosed, too few. Let us advise with industrious care, now ere the tyrant intercept our minds, the time, the place, the manner, when and where we should entrust our treasure to the winds. And since our states this doth in danger bring, let every point be circumspectly weighed. A circumstance or an indifferent thing doth oft mar all, when not with care conveyed.
As for the time, none could be wished more fit than is the present to perform our vow, since all the people must allow of it, by recent anguish moved extremely now. When represented in his triumph past, great Cato's mangled entrails made them weep, and desperate Scipio, whilst he left at last to seek a sanctuary amidst the deep. Then all those great men, whom in several parts bent for Rome's freedom, Caesar did overthrow, did by their pictures pierce the people's hearts, and made a piteous, though a pompous show. How could they but conceive a just disdain to be upbraided in so strange a sort, whilst he who only by their loss did gain of their calamity did make a sport? But yet his purpose grieves them most of all, since that he strives to be proclaimed a king, and not contents himself to make us thrall, but would even all our heirs to bondage bring. Thus, whilst the people are with him displeased, we best may do what to our part belongs, for after this they may be best appeased, if whilst their wrath thus last we venge their wrongs. And since we naught intend but what is right, whilst from our country we remove disgrace, let all be acted in the Senate's sight. A common cause and in a common place. Let those whose guilty thoughts do damn their deeds in corners like Minerva's birds abide, that which our country good our glory breeds may by the lights of heaven and earth be tried. The senators, by our example moved, pleased with this action which imports them too, to have the yoke of tyranny removed, may at the least confirm that which we do. So all the senators were said of old King Romulus in pieces to have torn, who then to tyrannize was grown too bold, and ere turned God, humanity did scorn.
Yea, what though Caesar were immortal made, as Romulus, whose deity him revives, I never as good adore him dead, than as a king obeyed him whilst he lives.
That place indeed, most for our glory makes a theatre worthy of so great an act, where in their sight, from whom most power he takes, we of the tyrant vengeance make exact. But I must recommend unto your mind a course, though strict, which we must allow, lest it o'erthrow all that we've designed, since past recovery, if neglected now. There is Antonius, Caesar's greatest friend, a man whose nature tyranny affects, whom all the soldiers daily do attend, as one who nought but to command respects. I fear that he, when we have Caesar slain, the grieved faction furnish with a head, so when we end, we must begin again with one who lives worse than the other dead. And in my judgment, I would think it best, when sacrifice the proud usurper lies, that this seditious enemy of rest should fall with him, with whom we first did rise. Thus of our liberty we now may lay a solid ground which can be shaped by none. Those of their purpose who apart delay, two labours have, who might have had but one.
I cannot, Cassius, condescend to kill, thus from the path of justice to decline one faultless yet, lest after he prove ill, so to prevent his guiltiness by mine. No, that neither honest were nor just, which rigorous form would but the world affright. Men by this mean our meaning might mistrust, and for a little wrong damn all that's right. If we do only kill the common foe, our country's zeal must then acquire due praise. But if, like tyrants fiercely raging so, we will be thought that which we raise to raise, and where we but intend to aid the state, though by endangering what we hold most dear, if slaying him is armed by private hate, we to the world all partial will appear. We must murder, see, who without doing ill cannot do good. And would the gods that Rome could be made free without the shedding of one drop of blood, then there is hope that Antony in end, while first our virtue doth direct the way, will leagued with us the liberty defend, and when brought back will blush as once astray.
Well, Brutus, I protest against my will. From this black cloud, whatever tempest fall, that mercy but most cruelly doth kill, which thus saves one, he once may plague us all.
When Caesar with the senators sits down, and in this your judgments generally accord, that for affecting wrongfully the crown, he lawfully may perish by the sword. No greater harm can for our course be wrought than by protracting the appointed time, lest that which acted would be virtue thought, be, if prevented, construed a crime. Can one thing long in many minds be pent? No, purpose would never be delayed, which judged by the issues fortune doth comment. If proposing reason, treason is betrayed, then may amongst ourselves some man remain, whom, if afraid, his pardon to procure, or if too greedy for the hope of gain. Time to disclose this consort may allure, then for our recompense we ruin reap. If aught our course thus made abortive mar, for if discovered once we cannot scape, as tyrants' ears hear much, their hands reach far.
The breast in which so deep a secret dwells would not be long charged with so weighty cares, for I conjecture, as their countenance tells, that many know our minds, though we not theirs. Even but of late one Casca came to see, who curious was to have our purpose known, and said to him, that which thou hadst from me, to me by Brutus hath at length been shown. Then Lena once came to us in like sort, and wished that our design might prosper well, but yet to haste did earnestly exhort, since others told what we refused to tell. While strangers rest familiar with our mind, and ere we then do all our purpose spy, make forward fast, or we will come behind. Fame, winged with breath, doth violently fly.
Their words but burst from tales uncertain forth, for whilst considering of their bondage thus, of Caesar's tyranny and of our worth, they think this should be done, and done by us. Such conjurations to confirm of old, some drinking others' bloods, swore on their swords, and cursing those who did their course unfold, used imprecations, execrable words. And yet, than this, though voluntarily vowed, free from all bonds, save that which virtue binds, more constantly no course was e'er allowed, till that the end must manifest our minds. And since so many frankly keep their faith, what first intended to accomplish bent, no doubt in spite of fickle fortune's wrath, the happy success shall our souls content. Might some few Thebans from the Spartans' pride by diverse tyrants' deaths redeem their town? And one Athenian who his virtue tried by 30 tyrants' ruin get renown? And to the Greeks are we inferiors grown, that where they have so many tyrants spoiled, there cannot one by us be all overthrown, whose state yet staggering may be soon embroiled. I am resolved, and with my thoughts decree whatever chance to come, or sweet or sour, I shall my soil from tyranny set free, or then myself free from the tyrant's power.
I, Lepidus, invited this last night. While Caesar went to sup, and I with him, of all death's shapes to talk, we took delight. So at the table to beguile the time, and whilst our judgments all about were tried, straight Caesar, as transported to the rest, with a most sudden exclamation cried, "Oh, of all deaths, unlooked for death is best. It from ourselves doth steal ourselves so fast, that even the mind no fearful form can see. Then is the pain apprehended past. Sour things tasted would first swallowed be. The threatened destiny thus he divined, it would appear, divinely then inspired. For now I hope that he shall shortly find that form of death which he himself desires."
Whilst of our band the fury flames most hot, and that their will to end this work is such, lest Caesar's absence disappoint the plot, which would of some abate the courage much, it, Decius, were exceedingly well done that to his lodging you addressed your way, him by all means to further forward soon, lest him some sudden chance may move to stay.
There, where the Senate minds this day to sit, stand all prepared, not fearing danger more. And for the sacrifice, when all is fit, I'll bring an offering hallowed of before.
And they exit. End of scene. So yeah, let's plan a murder. Yeah, it's a tricky thing trying to decide. You know, you're going to assassinate the head of state. How many people do you take with you? Not only in terms of how many people do you take out, but how many people do you bring into the plot? Who are your allies? Who do you want to tell? You know, who's an ally you want to bring with you because they're someone you can trust, or is there someone who may be on your side but you don't trust really as a person? We have a sort of the upshot of the conversation we had the other day with Cicero. We were asking, you know, where was Decius or in that conversation, because it sounded like he was sitting on the fence and then was sort of talked around. Then there was this thing of, oh, it was a test all along, and this sort of finalises that of going, oh no, it was definitely a test. I was testing it to see whether, because we're a group of conspirators and he's definitely in with the conspiracy. So it's pulling lots of interesting threads, and I'm wondering about the sort of tone of it as well. You know, is it all sort of huddled around a table, single light source from above, kind of, you know, film noir-y kind of stuff, and yeah, there's some interesting things going on here. I'm quite interested about this sequence about the Greeks, and their backstory of murderous actions against various heads of state. It's an interesting comparison. I'm not quite sure what to make of that one. Yeah, any thoughts from the room about this little sequence, or any of the component parts of it? Because there's quite a few little mini bits within it. Rachael, then Eric.
I think you could have it being in one of the guys' houses or something like that, at one of their tables. Because they do have, is it Cato that they talk about with his ripping out how he tears his entrails for his suicide? That's sort of a there's something that says intimacy in that, because they must have known him, even if it was only as a fellow politician. You know what I mean? Like there's something about that detail that's less, I don't know, professional, but something about a personal person that they knew. So maybe that would be something they would be saying, you know, I don't know, maybe that also brings like a sort of personalness to this that would suit the setting being somebody's house as opposed to like a pub or something.
Oh, it's got to be somewhere private. Whatever. It could be a pub, but it would have to be a lock-in, after hours kind of thing. I think Greg might know better than I as the precise time difference between Cato, Scipio, etc. and this. Would that be within living memory, or is that a full generation past on?
Depends on which Cato. So I think I'm trying to think because I'm getting about 3 different sources going around my head at the moment. Let me check and get back to you because I'm trying to remember from Robert Harris's Cicero trilogy at the moment because Cato certainly appears in that. One sec.
This is one of the problems with this period is that a lot of people have the same name. For example, we have a scene with 2 Brutuses. Anyway, sorry, Eric.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Brutus is interestingly sort of, he's kind of almost like the tragic hero who wants to believe that everything will go well because they're doing the right thing, in their heads at least. What else was I going to say? He has some interesting lines that kind of repeat, like he kind of repeats certain words at the beginning, which I found interesting to sort of navigate, because obviously you don't want to sort of give them the same weight as an actor, but I mean, I don't know, just sort of, it was like he wasn't sure of himself and he's gathering momentum almost.
Yeah. And yes, so Cassius is saying let's kill Mark Antony. He's a bit of a problem, and Brutus is going, no, we can't do that, mate. No, that's a bit much. If only we could do this without killing anyone. Wouldn't that be lovely? And you're sort of going, you're not in the right conspiracy here, are you, mate? You're really not. You're not really getting the stakes of what you're up to. Greg.
Cato died 2 years before.
Yeah, excellent. So yes, it is personal.
And it's Cato the younger. Sorry, just to be clear.
Tom.
I think it's well written. It's interesting. For me, it's the unveiling. It's the dawning of. They dare not say it, but they're now coming to terms and therefore mouthing and very eloquently the plot, the timeline, just stoically going forward and looking at all the angles, but all now committed. They know each other's hearts and minds, and I think it's nicely written.
Yeah, and this play is very neat scenes, neat units of action. I think this is one of the better scenes in the play as well so far. I mean, they seem to be gaining as each scene's going on. So William Alexander can be a bit inconsistent. You can go from a knockout scene to a bit of a dud, but this one on the whole, again, we're continuing the thing of last time. There's a lot of it, and these scenes can be a bit too much if you take them all together. But actually, one-on-one, they work really nicely. Eric?
I was going to say that it's also interesting that this scene comes after the whole... Well, in the previous act, we had, Brutus talking to Portia, his wife, about what he's going to do and sort of, you can't follow me to death and that kind of thing. And it's interesting that this comes after that. He doesn't sort of plot and plan without her, which is kind of, I don't know, just an interesting point character-wise.
Yes, because the last act was Brutus, agreeing to join the conspiracy with Cassius, and then telling his wife what he's agreed to do, and now we're into the planning stage. And a series of intimate scenes. They're all intimate. None of this is public, really. Almost none of these scenes, I think, are really public. They're all private, pretty much. Rachael, then we will move on, because we've got a lot of text to get through.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been here for the previous sessions on this play. But I think this is so interesting, like how you were bringing up something else about, I forget what you just said, but how they're talking about and discussing other people like Antonius, who I'm assuming is Mark Antony in this section, that this sort of civil unrest that's brewing is undercutting these guys' personal and professional relationships with people. And there's a certain I don't know, maybe you, if you brought this play out and you were to stage it, you could use it to discuss things like social contracts and how a lot of these you know, social contracts, group identities or relationships, you know, those, I don't know, something like sociology or something like that. I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but times of social upheaval could, you know, undermines these personal relationships, because I mean, they're looking at Caesar, but they're also looking at Mark Antony, and they're saying, you know, we don't want the country to go in this direction, but we also don't want it to go in this direction, and we're not going to invite him into the fold and take him into the fold in what we're deciding to do.
Okay, lots of things going on here. We're going to shift to the other side of the camp, as it were. Decius will return anon. He's not in the scene as it opens, but he will appear as announced earlier in the scene as it goes. But now we have, as previewed earlier, the entrance of for Act 4, Scene 2, Caesar and Calphurnia.
Long looked for time that should the glory yield, which I through Neptune's trustless reign have sought, and through the dust of many a bloody field, as by all dangers worthy to be bought. Thy coming now those lowering shadows clears, my hopes' horizon, which did long o'ercast. This day defrays the toils of many years, and brings the harvest of my labours past. The senators a messenger have sent, most earnestly entreating me to come, and hear myself discerned by their consent to wear a crown o'er all, excepting Rome. Thus they devise conditioned at this hour for him, of whom Mars have made them the prey, as subjects limit could their sovereign's power, who must have mind of naught but to obey. But, having pacified those present things, I mind to lead my valorous legions forth to the oriental realms, adoring kings, who can afford all that is due to worth. Then swim my thoughts in the ocean of delight, whilst on the pillow of soft praise reposed, those eyes to gaze upon my glory's light, which envy opened, admiration closed.
Ah, though your fancies great contentment find, whilst thus the world your virtue doth advance, yet a preposterous terror stings my mind and brags me with I know not what mischance. My wavering hopes o'erbalanced are with fears, which to my soul sinistrous signs impart, and ominous rumours so assault mine ears that they almost make breaches in my heart.
What? Do foiled Pompey's floating followers strive to recollect their ruins from the dust? Dare they, who will only by my tolerance live, more to their strength than to my favour trust? Or dost thou fear his son's dejected state, who steals infamous flying through those floods, which his great father, admiral of late, did plant through ships till their waves seemed woods? And make his brother's death his hopes grow more, since by them, straitened in a bloody strife, I, who in all the battles given before, did fight for victory, then fought for life. Or whilst to march to Parthia I prepared, doth a suspicion thus afflict thy sprite? By Crassus fortune moved, who perished there, the scorned prey, the barbarian spite. To those with Cassius, who from thence retired amongst my bands, a place I will allow, whose foes shall find bad fate at last expired, through the same sheep another shepherd now. Do not imagine matters to bemoan. For whilst there stands a world, can Caesar fall? Oh, thousands were conjured in one. I and my fortune might confound them all.
No, none of those my mind doth miscontent, who undisguised still like themselves remain. Unlooked for harms are hardest to prevent. There is no guard against concealed disdain. But in whom further can your trust repose, whom danger now all by all attends? Where private men but only fear their foes, oft kings have greatest cause to fear their friends. For since most trusted, fittest to betray those unto whom one's favour force affords, most dangerous ambushes with ease may lay, whilst falsest hearts are hid with fairest words. And some report, though privately, yet plain, that Dolabella and Antonius now by your destruction do intend to gain that which you keep by making all men bow.
No corpulent sanguinians make me fear, who with more pain their beards and their enemy than the enemies strike, and do themselves like the Epicureans bear to Bacchus, Mars, and Venus born alike. Their hearts do always in their mouths remain, as streams whose murmuring shows their course not deep. Then still they love to sport, to gross and plain, and never dream of aught but when they sleep. But those high sprites who hold their bodies down, whose visage lean their restless thoughts precords, whilst they their cares depth in their bosoms drown, I fear their silence more than the others' words. Thus Cassius now and Brutus seem to hold some great thing in their minds, whose fire oft smokes. What Brutus would, he vehemently would. Think what they list, I like not their pale looks. Yet with their worth this cannot well agree, in whom bright virtue seems so much to shine. Can those who have received their lives from me prove so ingrate that they do thirst for mine? Dear Cassius, marched with me new hopes conceive at the Hellespont who fortune durst not try, and like a dastard did his galleys leave in all, save courage, though more strength than I. Should I suspect that Brutus seeks my blood, whose safety still I tended with such care, who then the heavens from mortals me seclude, is only worthy to be Caesar's heir?
The corners of the heart are hard to know, though of those two the world the best doth deem. Yet do not trust too much to the outward show, for men may differ much from what they seem. None oft more fierce than those who look most mild, in piety sometime appears devout, and that the world the more may be beguiled. Even vice can clothe itself with virtue's coat. Though it would seem, all hatred now laid down, they on your favour only should depend. Yet no respect can counterpoise a crown, ambition hath no bounds, no greed, no end. Moved by vindictive hate or emulous pride, since some your person, some your place pursue, all threaten dangers to prevent, provide, and use for safety, what to state is due.
No armories that can hold treason out.
To fight your foes with bands be backed about.
So dastard tyrants try themselves to bear.
It is better is to give than to take fear.
No guard more strong than is the people's love.
But naught in the earth doth more inconstant prove.
Guards showing fear to charge me men might tempt.
Guards would put them from hope, you from contempt.
My breast from terror have been always clear.
When one least fears, of danger lurks most near.
I rather die than fear, at last life goes.
Yet death must grieve when forced by vaunting foes.
I will not cross my present pleasures so by apprehending what may chance to come. This world affords but too much cause for woe, and sorrows still must be harboured by some. By joys in time we must embrace relief. Then what that when they end, we in some measure may by their remembrance mitigate the grief, which still attends all those on the earth that stay. I think the Senate is assembled now, and for my coming doth begin to gaze. Meek and dainty once adorn my brow, and feast mine ears by drinking in due praise.
Stay, stay, dear Lord, retire thy steps again, and spare us space to prorogate whole years. Let not this ominous day begin thy reign, which fatal and unfortunate appears. An astrologian through the world renowned, thy horoscope's just calculation lays, and doth affirm, as he by signs hath found, that March's ides do brag to bound thy days. Walk not abroad where harms may be received, by great necessity, since no way forced. For though his judgment may be far deceived, in things that touch thy life, suspect the worst.
Whilst I reformed the calendar by fits, which did confound the order of the year, I waded through the depth of all their wits, who are the stars, the mysteries were clear, those pregnant sprites who walk betwixt the poles, and lodge at all the zodiac's several signs, to read strange wonders wrapped in the azure scrolls, of which our deeds, our words, our lives, our lines. By speculation of superior powers, some nature's secrets curious are to know, as how celestial bodies rule o'er ours, and what their influence doth work below. Yea, they sometime may brave conjectures make of those whose parts they by their birth do prove, since naturally all inclinations take from planets then predominant above. And yet no certainty can be had. Some virtuously against their stars have strived, as Socrates, who grew, though born but bad, the most accomplished man that ever lived. But at the hour ordained so close our lights, no earth-clogged soul can to the knowledge come. For oh, the destinies far from our sights in clouds of darkness have involved our doom. And some but only guess at great men's falls by bearded comets. And prodigious stars, whose sight distracting shake the world appalls, are still denouncing terror, death, or wars. The time uncertain is of certain death, and that fantastic man far past his bounds, with doubt and reverence they should manage breath, who will divine upon conjectured grounds.
But this all day hath preyed upon my heart, and from the same of cares a tribute claimed. Do not despise that which I must impart, though but a dream and by a woman dreamed. I thought, alas, the thought yet wounds my breast, that whilst we both, as those whom Morpheus weds, lay softly buried with a pleasant rest, I in thy bosom, thou within the beds, then from my soul strange terrors did withdraw, the expected peace by apprehended harms. For I imagined, no doubt I saw, and did embrace thee bloody in mine arms. Thus, whilst my soul by sorrows was surcharged, of which huge weight it yet some burden bears, I, big with grief, two elements enlarged, the air with my sighs, the water with my tears.
That which I heard with thy report accords, whilst thou all seemed dissolved in grief at once, a heavy murmuring made with mangled words, was interrupted oft by tragic groans. The memory, but not the judgment, frames those raving fancies which disturb the brain, whilst night dissolves all day's designs in dreams. The senses sleeping, souls would stir in vain. From superstitious fears this care proceeds, which still would watch o'er that which thou dost love. And in thy mind this melancholy breeds, which doth these strange imaginations move.
In so light account leave off to hold those fatal warnings which our minds should bleed, to search dark matters till we may unfold what dangers huge do hang above thy head. With sacred garlands he who things divines by the entrails of the consecrated beast, doth in the offering see sinistrous signs, and I entreat thee, do not hence make haste.
When I in Spain against young Pompey went, does the diviner threaten me before? Yet did I prosecute my first intent, which with new laurels did my brows decore.
And yet you hardly there, as I do here, from danger far engaged redeemed your life. But tokens now more monstrous do appear, and I suspect far worse than open strife.
Lest I too much seem wedded to my will, as other counsels scorning to allow, with jealous eyes I'll search about me still, and even mistrust myself to trust thee now. Yet, if I stay, the senators deceive me, my beginning straight begin to hate. So might I perish seeking to be saved. By flying it, some fall upon their fate. But here one comes who can resolve me much, with whom I used to weigh affairs of weight. Whence comest thou, Decius, that thy haste is such? Is aught occurred that craves our knowledge straight?
I come to tell you how the Senate stays, till that your presence bless their longing sight, and to conclude what is proposed delays, since your applause can only make it right. They your comment contentment to procure intend, and all their thoughts seem at one object bent, save that amongst themselves they do contend, who you to please shall rarest ways invent.
Than that, no treasure to my soul more dear, which to enjoy from hence I long to part. But yet I know not what arrests me here, and makes my feet rebellious to my heart. From thee, dear friend, I never do conceal the weightiest secrets that concern me most, and at this time I likewise must reveal how heavens by signs me with destruction boast. To superstition, though not erst inclined, my wife by dreams doth now presage my fall. And it is a soothsayer likewise have divined, the sacrifice prodigious seems to all, so that till this disastrous day be gone, all company I purpose to disuse, and to the senators will send someone to paint my absence with a fair excuse.
Do not repose on superstitious signs. You to subject the people thus to bring, while sovereign like you limit their designs, seems not a tyrant seeking to be king. How can we satisfy the world's conceit, whose tongue still in all ears your praise proclaims? Or shall we bid them leave to deal in state, till that Calphurnia first had better dreams? If that this day you private would remain, the Senate to dissolve yourself must go, and then incontinent come back again, when you have shown to it some reverence, so.
With thy advice is powerful, I agree. The senator shall have no cause to grudge. A little space will part a space from me, and I'll be shortly ready to dislodge.
And everybody exits, leaving Caesar alone.
Whence comes this huge and admirable change that in my breast hath uncouth thoughts infused? Doth the earth then erst yield terrors now more strange, or but my mind less courage than it used? What spiteful fate against my state contends, that I must now to fancied plagues give place, by foes not moved, afraid amongst my friends, by war secure, endangered but by peace? What strongest troops to fight with me did come, that did my heart the highest hopes conceive. I warred with many, many to overcome, the greatest battles, greatest glory gave. As the enemy's numbers still my courage grew, through depths of dangers oft times have I passed, yet never did those boundless labours rue, to have none greater first, none equal last. When bragging Gauls, moved by their neighbours' falls, had from the fields, no, from my fury fled, and hid themselves with arms, their arms with wars, whilst I my troops before Alexia led. Then though their swarm fall from the bounds about, whose hosts to compass me inflamed with wrath, that the besiegers all besieged about seemed drawn by anger in the nets of death. No way I, who could with the pride comport, that those barbarians by vain vaunts bewrayed, did reassault the assaulters in such sort, that words by wounds were by death repaid. Of those within the town to ease their toils, till quite o'ercome with their coming was not known, who straight, upbraided by the barbarous spoils, did yield themselves as if with them overthrown. By liquid legions, whilst with turmoiled boasts, the trident bearer strived my spoils to bear. Though threatened thrice amidst his humid host, still courage scorned to think of abject fear. I used those pirates who had me deceived, still as my servants, thundering, threatening forth, and gave them money more than they had craved, whose ignorance too meanly prized my worth. Yet, gathering ships, I stayed not too long ashore, but traced their steps, though they not paved the way, and taking them, as I had found before, by naught but death their ransom would defray. Then when, without the advice of others' minds, though hoary waves, I passed alone by night, whilst in a little bark against great winds, that even the pilot looked not for the light. The waves themselves asunder seemed to tear, as in their gravel I might choose a grave, and crystal arches did above me rear, that I a tomb fit for my state might have. Whilst dangers seemed to merit Caesar's death, as Neptune raised his head, I raised my heart. And shewing what I was with constant breath, to weak Amyclas courage did impart. Was I not once amidst large Nilus float, whilst me to wound a wood of darts did fly, yet swimming so careless of my enemy's shot, that I in my hand held my papers dry. With open dangers thus in every place, I, whilst oft encompassed both by sea and land, did undismayed look horror in the face, as born for naught but only to command. But since a world of victories have filled with trophies, temples, theatres with my praise, that bathed it with balm which glory's bays had stilled, with friends in peace I look to spend my days. The chamber's music now affrights me more than trumpet sounds when marching in the field, and gowns through signs of peace was worse than before the pompous splendor of a flaming shield. Those thoughts of late which had disdained to doubt, though I alone had marched amongst my foes, lo, whilst amongst my friends while backed about, they than the eyes more dangers now disclose. If any chance to meet a number brings, the eye insurrections fear from common wrath. Yea, if two talk apart of private things, straight I suspect that they conspire my death. When sudden rumours rise from vulgar smoke, whilst the inward motions roll my restless eyes, I at each corner for an ambush look, and start astonished lest some tumult rise. When light, first lightning doth encourage toils, I still despair to re-enjoy the night, and when mine eyes outrageous darkness spoils, I never look to grace them with the light. For when the light with shadows makes a change to flatter mortals with a dream of rest, what ugly gorgons, what chimeras strange to brag the little world within my breast. The time which should appease impetuous cares doth double mine, who view most when quite blind. I apprehend huge horrors and despairs, whilst the outward objects not distract my mind. Now of my conquest, what delight remains? There is the peace pursued by many a strife. Have I but taken pain to purchase pains, and sought by dangers for a dangerous life? Is this the period of aspiring powers, and promised calms to be most plagued by storms? Lurk boisterous serpents under fairest flowers, and hellish furies under heavenly forms. It will not grieve my ghost below to go, if circumvented in the wars I end as bold Marcellus by Rome's greatest foe, who gave his ashes honor as a friend. Or like to Epaminondas in his death. Oh, the gods I had amidst alarms when charged with recent spoils being spoiled of breath, whilst I to Pluto might have marched in arms. Yet life to end, which naught but toil affords, our pay to death the tribute that it owes. Straight with my blood let some come dye their swords, whose naked breast encounter shall their blows. But have the furies seized my breast, and poisoned thus my sprite with desperate rage? By horrid serpents, whilst quite barred from rest, no kind of comfort can my cares assuage. No, no, Atropos, yet spare my thread a space, that to the Stygian streams, ere walking down, I may of honour have the highest place, and if I fall, yet fall beneath a crown. Whilst ears are bended to applauding shouts, my thoughts divided are within my breast, and my tossed sword afloat between two doubts, yet knows not on what ground to build her rest. The senators have this day designed to show the world how they esteem my worth. Yet do portentous signs perturb my mind, by which the heavens would point my danger forth, the gods from me with indignation gone, and everything charactered have my death. Must both heaven and earth conspire in one to quench a little spark of smoking breath? My safety would that I should stay within till this disastrous day give darkness place, but daring honour would have me begin to reap the glory of my painful race. And I'll advance in spite of threatened broils, for although the fates accomplish what we dream, when only death have triumphed of my spoils, I then, though breathless, still shall breathe with fame.
Exit Caesar, leaving us with the chorus.
What fury thus doth fill the breast with a prodigious rash desire, which banishing their souls from rest, doth make them live with high aspire, whilst it within their bosom boils, as salamanders in the fire, or like to serpents changing spoils, their withered beauties to renew. Like vipers with unnatural toils, of such the thoughts themselves pursue, who for all lines their lives do square, whilst like chameleons changing hue, they only feed on empty air. To pass ambition greatest matters brings, and, save contentment, can attain all things. This active passion doth disdain to match with any vulgar mind, as in base breasts where terror reign. Too great a guest to be confined, it doth but lofty thoughts frequent, where it a spacious field may find, itself with honour to content, where reverenced fame doth loudest sound, those for great things by courage bent, far lifted from this lumpish round, who would in the sphere of glory move, whilst lofty thoughts which naught can bind, all rivals live in virtue's love, on abject praise as the eagles never light, ambition poisons but the greatest sprite. And of this restless vulture's brood, if not become too great a flame, a little spark doth sometime good, which make great minds affecting fame, to suffer still all kind of pain. Their fortune at the bloody game, who hazard would for hope of gain, unless first burned by thirst of praise. The rest to a higher strain, their wits by emulation raise, as those who would applaud, as those who hold applauses dear. And what great mind at which men gaze, itself can be of ambition clear, which is when valued at the highest price, a generous error, an heroic vice. But when this frenzy flaming bright doth sow the souls of some surprise, that they can taste of no delight, but what from sovereignty doth rise, then huge affliction it affords. Such must themselves so to disguise, prove prodigal of courteous words, give much to some, and promise to all, then humble seem to be made lords. Yea, being thus to many thrall, must words impart, if not support, to those who crushed by fortune fall, and grieve themselves to please each sort. Are not those wretched, who o'er a dangerous snare do hang by hopes, whilst balanced in the air? Then when they have the port attained, which was through seas of danger fought, they, lo, at last but loss have gained, and by great trouble bought. Their minds are married still with fears, to bring forth many a jealous thought, with searching eyes and watching ears, to learn that which it grieves to know, the breast that such a burden bears, what huge afflictions do overthrow. Thus each prince is, as all perceive, no more exalted than brought low. Of many lord, of many slave, that idle greatness which the earth doth adore, is gotten with great pain, and kept with more. He who to this imagined good did through his country's bowels tend, neglecting friendship, duty, blood, and all on which trust can depend, or by which love can be conceived, doth find of what he did attend. His expectations far deceived, for since suspecting secret snares, his soul hath still of rest been reaved, whilst squadrons of tumultuous cares forth from his breast extort deep groans. Thus Caesar now of life despairs, whose lot his hope exceeded once, and who can long well keep an ill one state? Those perish must by some whom all men hate.
And thus ends Act 4. Oh, there's, well done, Greg. Well done, everyone with long speeches there. But it has to be said that Caesar speech works really well, and I thought you were bringing some really nice stuff out of that. We've got this scene with Calphurnia. Then it becomes a slightly public scene as Decius comes in and sort of talks him around to going, and then we get is this interior monologue from Caesar working through things, and you there is a real journey to that thought process going on there. I'm really quite impressed with this act. There's some solid stuff here. Thoughts on the room briefly, because we do need to move through Act 5. Desna.
Yeah, so I was struck by the difference between the scene between Caesar and Calphurnia and the scene between Brutus and Portia, where Brutus and Portia seem closer and more wrapped up in one another, and Calphurnia and Caesar, it felt like she was just begging him to stay, and he was going, "Don't be ridiculous, nothing's going to happen to me." But then the speech following that reveals that there's this whole other internal state of mind and train of thought, and I don't know how that follows chronologically, whether he's thinking these things whilst he's also speaking to Calphurnia, but it's a really powerful juxtaposition, I think.
Yeah, especially as he starts the scene by saying, "Oh, they're going to make me go and be offer me all these honors and things and give me power and stuff over everything, and it's sort of going, yeah, is that any of that really true in the sense of they're going to force me to take power over, and sort of, you're talking to your wife here, you're not talking to other people, so yeah, there's something odd in the way their relationship works, and not odd in a this doesn't make sense, odd in just that's their relationship. And you're right, the contrast between and again the way that this act ends with this relationship, in the way that the previous act ended with Portia and Brutus, that there's this interesting mirroring. It's a very schematic approach to the dramaturgy of this. Each act is very neat and tidy in the bits of information it gives you and the juxtapositions that it's giving you. So there's something really nicely well worked out here, actually, in the way that, again, William Alexander doesn't always give us. Sometimes you're just sort of going, why is this random thing happening randomly? Whereas here, it's all very logical. I don't know North very well for his translation of the history of this stuff, but I suspect also that a lot of this is coming from his source material in terms of how some of the scenes are laying out and things. It feels, like there's a good deal of research in there. With all of Alexander's plays, actually. I mean, I think sometimes the research has got in the way of the dramaturgy. I don't think it has here. Rachael.
This is just, I guess, a William Alexander timeline question. But is this later on in his career? Because this seems a lot more put together for him, at least to my memory of some of the other stuff we've read, because he's been interesting, but this one, even with this, superfluousness of poetry, I think it's all necessary, but it's more difficult, I think, when you're acting it than when it's on the page or something like that. But this seems much more coherent sometimes and a lot less weird than some of the other stuff we've read by him.
Yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, it's at the last. It sort of has two flourishes. There's two early plays, and then which may have slightly different chronology, and then there's these two later plays, this and the Alexandrian tragedy. But they also get rewritten as well. He does tweak around with stuff. I think off the top of my head, that's might. Oh, maybe I'm thinking something else. But yeah, broadly speaking, this is at his second flourish, and it might be his last of the four. But I think you could fit a wafer thin mint between this and the other. But I could be wrong on that point. But yeah, I think that's not an unreasonable thing. But I also just think it's an easier story to do when you're telling this bit of story. Eric.
I can't remember when this was published or like when this was sort of written, because there's a probably going gunpowder plot, yeah, under all this and sort of, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, it is post.
Did he get murdered?
It's about 2 years after gunpowder plot. So absolutely bang on. Greg.
Wow. I really should read parts beforehand, because that twist came at me like a train, steam train, express train, should I say? Because oh my goodness, and I think that's I find these I just often every so often find a speech that just not throws me and makes me go, that is one of the best speeches I've ever read, and that was one of them. I don't know, because I'm not an expert on language, I'm not an expert on rhyme, I'm not an expert on anything like that, but I felt like there was a language shift in there. Not sure how, but there was something that just changed. Maybe it was just me thinking it and sort of went, I'll slow it right down and go very quiet, but I wasn't expecting that shift change. And it was beautifully, beautifully written. But I thought the Calphurnia scene was, I think I said in the chat, that's one of the first times I've ever met a Caesar that felt human. Somebody who I actually went, this is a person, this isn't a character, this is a person. And beautifully, and actually Calphurnia was, I wasn't here last week, I don't know how Calphurnia works out to the rest of the play, but Calphurnia felt very well written, as did the conspirators in that previous scene.
I think we did admire the previous half of the play, and we did sort of enjoy it, but there was a certain reservation. There was quite a lot of stuff, and certainly the opening was a bit extra, with this epic. The Juno turns up and just says, "I've got one hell of a grudge," whereas I genuinely have really enjoyed this act, and have fewer reservations about. Okay, no, this is workable. I mean, yes, it's big and it's a lot of words and all the rest of it, but actually this feels just very doable in a way that actually the previous scenes were sort of going, okay, we'd need to work this and we'd need to cut, and do a lot more work to, put it on a stage. This feels much more stagey, though it's still a lot of words and it might be more than an audience would take. But hey, I'm actually feeling more confident about giving it a go. Very briefly, Eric, and then we'll move on.
I'm just wondering if the Juno speech is basically because Caesar does mention that both heaven and earth conspired for his overthrow. I'm just wondering if that's why we have that speech, sort of Juno going, yeah, I'm gonna fuck his shit up so he can, so that like I don't know, I'm just wondering. Maybe that's why it kind of coincides.
Yeah, I think it's all thematically linked together. I mean, the Juno thing isn't totally random, but it is an interesting take on a history, you know, to say that in a sense Julius Caesar was doomed because of the gods. It wasn't to do with, you know, conspiracy or history, the wheels of history or thought, you know, there was something else going on. Anyway, we need to move on. We're going to run Act 5 and see what that gives us. So we've got 2 scenes in Act 5. Act 5, Scene 1, Marcus Brutus. The chorus continues and interacts. Antonius, Caius Cassius, and Marcus Tullius Cicero.
Are generous Romans so degenerate now that they from honor have estranged their hands, and used with burdens do not blush to bow? Yea, even though broken, shake not off their bands. This glorious work was worthy of your pain, which now ye may by others' dangers have. But what enchants you thus, that ye abstain, that ye which should have taken to receive? Where be those inundations of delight, which should burst out from thoughts overflowed with joy, whilst emulous virtue may your minds incite, that which we give you bravely to enjoy? Or quite conformed into your former state, do still your minds of servitude allow, is broken by adversity of late, not capable of better fortune now? Lo, we who by the tyrant's favor stood and grieved, but at the yoke which you outraged, have our advancement, riches, rest, and blood, all liberty for liberty engaged.
Thou, like thy great progenitor in this, hast glory to thyself, t'us freedom brought, then liberty what greater treasure is? Ought with it much, without it much seems not. But pardon us, heroic man, though we to high perfection hardly can aspire, though every man cannot a Brutus be, what none can imitate, all must admire. At this strange course, with too much light made blind, we our opinions must suspend a space. When sudden changes do dismay the mind, the judgment to the passion first gives place.
What wonder now, though this most barbarous deed have with amazement closed your judgment in, which, oh, I fear shall great confusion breed, when Caesar's toils did end, Rome's did begin. Most suspicious minds had not believed that Romans reverenced for their worth by us would have presumed to kill or to have grieved unhallowed body inhumanely thus. You would have once but dreamed of such, despite what strange hostility in time of peace to kill, though not accused against all right, a sacred man and in a sacred place.
If Caesar as a citizen had lived and had by law decided every strife, then I would grant those treason had contrived, who went without a law to take his life. But to pervert the laws, subvert the state, if all these travels did directly tend, then I must say we did no wrong of late. Why should not tyrants make a tragic end?
Since destinies did Caesar's soul enlarge, what course can we for his recovery take? Ah, thus unrelenting Charon's restless barge stands to transport all o'er, but brings back none of life's frail glass when broken with vain groans. What earthly power the ruins can repair, or who can gather up when scattered once, one's blood from the earth, or yet his breath from there? Let us of those who pass oblivion's flood oblivious be, since hope of help is gone, and spend our cares where cares may do most good. Lest Rome wail many, where she wails but one.
Still concord for the common weal were best to reconcile divided thoughts again. Then discord to great towns no greater pest, whose violence no reverence can restrain. Yet oftentimes those weary wits have erred who would buy wealth and ease at any cost. Let honesty to profit be preferred, and to vile peace war when it wounds us most. But seeking peace, what surety can we find? Can faithless men give faith just fears to stay? No sacred band impiety combined, which swears for trust, seeks trust but to betray. What helped it Caesar that we all had sworn his body still from dangers to redeem? Those who are once perjured hold oaths in scorn, all are most frank of what they least esteem.
None needs in states which are from tyrants free, those execrations to confirm his will, where willingly men would with good agree, and without danger might despise all ill. All odious oaths by those are only craved, whose suit for reason doth warrant one, whilst who deceive, afraid to be deceived, seek of men thralled what none whilst free would grant. When Caesar had prevailed in France and Spain, his fortune building on his country's rack, of liberty a shadow to remain, we gave him all that he was bent to take. The Senate had reserved naught but a show, whose course to it by Caesar was imposed, who lifted up by bringing others low, of offices and provinces disposed. Then that our faded hopes might never spring, when bent to try the Parthians' wooden shower, he for 5 years disposed of everything, even in his absence, leaving us no power. How some aggravate our deed with hate, who durst his body wound or with blood stained, though consecrated by constraint of late, yea, but reputed holy, yet profane, and did forget how he, wondrous case, the tribuneship did violate with scorn, which our forefathers free in time of peace advisedly had inviolable sworn. Did he not once appropriate, swollen with wrath, the public treasure to his private use? And to the tribune boldly threatened death, who did resist, grieved at that great abuse. Twixt Romans and a tyrant, what avails a covenant whilst right rests trod on thus? Who can build further when the ground once fails? Could we save him who sought to ruin us?
So absolutely good no man remains whose natural weakness may him not o'ercome. Even virtues die from vice may take some stains, and worthy minds may of gross faults have some. As in fine fruits or weeds, fat earth abounds, even as the labourers spend or spare their pain. The greatest sprites, disdaining vulgar bounds of what they seek, the highest height must gain. They that bright glory may be so enjoyed, as only born to be in action still, had rather be than idle ill employed. Great spirits must do great good, or then great ill. The world's chief treasure, which bright rays do arm, huge evil procured, though only framed for good, till that fond youth whom his own wish did harm was killed by fire and buried in a flood. By rules of reason whilst he rightly lived, when lawfully elected by the state, what glorious deeds by Caesar were achieved, which all the world as wonders must relate. But when of right he buried all respects, as blind ambition he bewitched his mind, what harm ensued? By pitiful effects, we at the first, he at the last did find, whilst like Narcissus with himself in love, he with our bondage banqueted its sight, and for a while, uncertain joys to prove, with all our woes would sweeten his delight. How could brave men with virtuous minds as those who of their country's weal are jealous still, but stoutly to all storms their states expose, the state's destroyer resolute to kill? But since our freedom flows from Caesar's blood, let us embrace that which too long we lack. Peace gives to justice power, it to all good, where war breeds wrong, and wrong all kind of wrack. This city hath experienced with great pain what guilty troubles rise from civil strife, which by her ruins registered remain, since first the Gracchi gave a contention life. when Sylla once and Marius, mad through pride, did strive who should the most tyrannic prove, what memorable miseries were tried from Romans' minds no time can e'er remove. Then last by Caesar and his son-in-law, what thousands ghosts to Pluto were dispatched. The world those hosts divided saw, which joined in one, no world of worlds had matched. Yet with this wit, which we have dearly bought, let us abhor all that may breed such broils, lest when we have ourselves to ruin brought, in end barbarians bear away our spoils.
Rome to those great men hardly can afford a recompense according to their worth, who by a tyrant's o'erthrow have restored the light of liberty which was put forth. Yet, by due praises with their merits even, let us acknowledge their illustrious minds, and to their charge let provinces be given. Still virtue grows when it preferment finds.
Those barbarous realms by whose respective will of Caesar's conquests monuments are shown, as if they held them highly honoured still, who warred with Caesar though they were o'erthrown. Can this disgrace by their proud minds be borne, whilst we dishonour whom they honour thus? And shall we not, what as a tyrant torn, give him a tomb who gave the world to us? Must his decrees be all reduced again, and those degraded whom he graced of late, as worthy men and worldly did gain the rooms of reputation in the state? As for tyrant we him damn so soon, for his murderers do rewards devise, then what he did must likewise be undone, for which I fear a foul confusion rise.
Ah, brave Antonius, sow not seeds of war, and if thou always dost delight in arms, the haughty Parthians yet undaunted are, which may give thee great praise, and us no harms. Detest in time the abomination broils, detest in time the abominable broils, for which no conqueror to triumph hath comed, whilst this wretched town, which still some party spoils, must loathe the victor and lament the o'ercombed. And shall we still contend against all good, to make the yoke where we should bound abide? Must still the commons sacrifice their blood, as only born to serve the great men's pride?
Whilst I, the depths of my affection sound, reap the obligations which I owe, I find myself by oaths and duty bound, all Caesar's foes, or then myself to o'erthrow. But when I weigh what to the state belongs, the which to plague no passion shall get place, then I, with grief digesting private wrongs, war with myself to give my country peace. Yet whilst my thoughts of this last purpose muse, I altogether dissent from this, that Caesar's fame or body we abuse, to deal with tyrants, as the custom is, lest guilty of ingratitude we seem, if guerdoning our benefactors thus, great Caesar's body from disgrace redeem. And let his acts be ratified by us. Then for the public weal which makes us pause towards those that have him killed to extend regard, let them be pardoned for their kinsman's cause. Remission given for evil is a reward.
We stand not vexed like malefactors here, with a dejected and remorseful mind. So in your presence supplicants to peer, as who themselves of death do guilty find. But looking boldly with a lofty brow, through a delight of our design conceived, we come to challenge gratefulness of you that have of us so great a good received. But if you will suspend your thoughts a space, though not the givers entertain the gift, do us reject, yet liberty embrace, to have you free, lo, that was all our drift. So Rome, her ancient liberties enjoy, like Brutus and let Cassius banished live. Thus banishment would breed us greater joy than what at home a tyrant's wealth could give. Though some misconstrue may this course of ours, by ignorance or then by hate deceived, the truth depends not on opinion's powers, but is itself, however misconceived. Though to acknowledge us not one would dare, our merit of itself is a reward. Of doing good none should repent their pain, though they get no reward, nor yet regard. I'll venture yet my fortune in the field, with every one that Rome to bondage draws, and as for me, however others yield, I'll naught obey but reason and the laws.
What fools are those who further travel take for that which they, even past recovery, know? Who can revive the dead or bring time back? That can no creature who doth live below. Great Pompey, now, for whom the world still weeps, lies low, neglected on a barbarous shore. Self-slaughtered Scipio floats amidst the deeps, whom it may be sea monsters do devour. Of Livian wolves, grave Cato feasts the wombs, whose death of worth the world defrauded leaves. Thus some that did deserve mausolean tombs have not a title graved upon their graves. And yet may Caesar, who procured their death, by brave men slain, be buried with his race. All civil war quite banished with his breath, let him now die, and us alive have peace. We should desist our thoughts on things to set, which may harm some, and can give help to none. Learn to forget that which we cannot get, and let our cares be gone, of all things gone. Those who would strive all crosses to o'ercome, to present times must still confirm their course, and making way for that which is to come, and meddle with things past, but by discourse. Let none seek that which doth to no good when found, since Caesar now is dead, however dead. Let all our grief go with him to the ground, for sorrow best becomes a lightless shade. It were the best that joined in mutual love, we physic for this wounded state prepare, neglecting those who from the earth remove. All men on earth for earthly things must care.
Oh, how those great men friendship can pretend, by soothing others thus with painted winds, and seem to trust, where treason they attend, whilst to love their mouth, and malice fills their minds. Those but to them poor simple souls appear, whose countenance doth discover what they think, who make their words, as is their meaning, clear, and from themselves can never seem to shrink. Lo, how Antonius feigns to quench all jars, and whom he hates with kindness doth embrace. But as he furthered first the former wars, some fear he still will prove a foe to peace. Now where Calphurnia stays our steps address, since by this sudden chance her loss was chief, all visit should their neighbors in distress, to give some comfort or to share in grief.
And the scene closes. We go into Act 5, Scene 2, Calphurnia, Nuntius, and Chorus.
When darkness last imprisoned had mine eyes, such monstrous visions did my heart affright. So quite dejected, it as stupid dies, through terrors then contracted in the night. A melancholy cloud so dims my breast that it my mind fit from all misfortune makes, a lodging well disposed for such a guest, where naught of sorrow but the impression lacks. And I imagine every man I see, my senses so corrupted are by fears, a herald to denounce mishaps to me, who should infuse confusion in my ears. Oh, there he comes to violate my peace, in whom the object of my thoughts I see. All thy message is charactered in thy face, and by thy looks directed is to me. Thy troubled eyes rest rolling for relief, as lately frighted by some ugly sight. Thy breath doth pant as if grown big with grief, and straight to bring some monstrous birth to light.
The man of whom the world in doubt remained, if that his minor fortune was more great, whose valor conquered, clemency retained, all nations subject to the Roman state. Fraud harmed him more than force, friends more than foes. Must this sad discourse by me be made?
Stay, ere thou further go defray my woes. How doth my love? Where is my life?
Dead.
Dead?
Thou apprehending horrors in her mind, now since she hath a certainty received, she by experience greater grief doth find. Till born, the passions cannot be conceived, when as a high disaster force affords. Oh, how that tyrant whom affliction bears, bars the ears from comfort, and the mouth from words. And when obdured, scorns to dissolve in tears.
Ah, since the lights of that great light are set, why doth not darkness spread itself o'er all? At least what further comfort can I get, whose pleasures had no period but his fall? Oh, the gods I always might confine, flames in my breast and floods within my eyes, to entertain so great a grief as mine, that thence there might fit furniture arise. Yet I disdain, though by distress o'erthrown, by such external means to seek relief. The greatest sorrows are by silence shown, whilst all the senses are shut up with grief. But misery doth so tyrannic grow, that it of sighs and tears a tribute claims. Ah, when the cup is full, it must o'erflow, and fires which burn must offer up some flames. Yet, though what thou hast said my death shall be, sunk so deeply in a melted heart, of my life's death report each point to me, for every circumstance that I may smart.
What fatal warnings did forego his end, which by his state to frustrate some did try? But he who scorned excuses to pretend was by the destinies drawn forth to die, whilst by the way he chanced to meet with one who had his death's day name. He to him said, "The Ides of March be come, but yet not gone." The other answered, and still constant stayed. Another brought a letter with great speed, which the conspiracy at length did touch, and gave it Caesar in his hand to read, protesting that it did import him much. Yet did he lay it up where it still rests, as do the great whom blessed the world reputes, who grieve to be importuned by requests of simple supplicants neglect the suits. Or he of it the reading did defer, still troubled by attendance at the gate, whilst some to show their credit would confer, to flatter some something to entreat. Not only did the gods by diverse signs give Caesar warning of his threatened times, but did the foes disturb the rash designs, and to their troubled thoughts give strange alarms. A senator, who by some words we find, who to the conspirators, though none of theirs, had shown himself familiar with their mind, then chanced to deal with Caesar in affairs that sight their souls did with confusion fill. For thinking that he had told their purposed deeds, they straight themselves, or Caesar thought, to kill. A guilty conscience no accuser needs, but marking that he used when taking leave a suitor's gesture, when affording thanks, they of course did greater hopes to conceive, and ranged them 7 according to their ranks. Then Caesar marched forth to the fatal place near Pompey's theatre where the Senate was, where, when he had remained a little place, all the confederate flocked about.
Alas!
First for the form, Metellus Cimber craved to have his brother from exile restored, yet with the rest a rude repulse received. Whilst it they all too earnestly implored, bold Cimber, who in strife with him did strive to cover with his gown in his head, yet then was the first blow given by Casca's hand, which on his neck a little wound but made. And Caesar, starting whilst the stroke he spied, by strength from further striking Casca stayed, whilst both the two burst out at once and cried, he, "Traitor Casca!" and he, "Brother, aid!" Then all the rest against him did arise, like desperate men whose fury force affords, that Caesar on no side could set his eyes, but every look encountered with some swords. Yet as a lion, when by nets surprised, stands struggling still so long as he hath strength, so Caesar, as he had their power despised, did with great rage resist, till at the length he thus cried out, when spying Brutus come, "And thou, my son!" Then grief did back rebound. Naught but unkindness Caesar could overcome, that of all things doth give the deepest wound.
Ah, where unkindness is, where love was thought, a tender passion breaks the strongest heart. For of all those who give offense in aught, men others hate, but for unkind men, smart.
Taking then no delight in light, as who disdainfully the world disclaimed, or if from Brutus' blow to hold his sight, as if so great ingratitude ashamed, he with his gown when covered first o'er all, as one who neither fought nor wished relief, nor wronging majesty in state did fall, no sigh consenting to betray his grief. Yet if by chance or force I cannot tell, yet at the place where Pompey's statue stood, as if to crave him pardon, Caesar fell, that in revenge it might exhaust his blood. But when his corpse abandoned quiet by breath, did fortune's frailties monument remain, that all might have like interest in his death, and by the same look for like praise or pain. Then Cassius, Brutus, and the rest began with that great emperor's blood to dye their hands. What beast in the earth more cruel than is man, when o'er his reason passion once commands?
Whilst brutish Brutus and proud Cassius thus, Rome's greatest captain under trust deceived, where was Antonius, since a friend to us, that he not lost himself or Caesar saved?
The whole conspirators remained in doubt. Had he and Caesar joined to be undone, and so caused one to talk with him without, who feigned a conference till the fact was done? Then, knowing well in such tumultuous broils that the first danger always is the worst, he fled in haste, disguised with borrowed spoils, for rage and for disdain, even like to burst.
The senators which were assembled there, when they beheld that great man brought to end, what was their part? To what inclined their pair? I fear affliction could not find a friend.
Of those who in the Senate house did sit, so sad an object sorry to behold, or fearing what bold hands might more commit, each to his house a several way did hold. This act with horror did confound their sight, and unawares their judgment did surprise, when any hasty harms unlooked for light, the resolution hath not time to rise. That man on whom the world did once rely, by all long reverenced and adored by some, none to attend him had but two and I.
To what an ebb may fortune's flowing come? Why should men following on the smoke of pride leave certain ease to seek a dreamed delight, which when they have by many dangers tried, they neither can with safety keep nor quite? The people who by force subdued remain may pity those by whom oppressed they rest. They but one tyrant have, whereas their reign 1,000 tyrants in one tyrant's breast. What though great Caesar once commanded kings, whose only name whole nations did appall? Yet now let no man trust in worldly things. A little earth holds him who held it all.
Ah, had he but believed my faithful cares, his state to establish you have always strived, then, escaping this conspiracy of theirs, he honoured still, and I had happy lived. Did I not spend of supplications store that he within this house this day would waste? As I by dreams advertised was before, which showed what was to come and now is past. Whilst the soothsayers sacrifice did find a beast without a heart their altar stain, By that presage, my soul might have divined that I without my heart would soon remain. But all those terrors could no terror give to that great mind whose thoughts too high still aimed. He by his fortune confident did live, as if the heavens for him had all things framed. Yet though he ended have his fatal race, to brag for this, let not his murderers strive. For oh, I hope to see within short space him dead adored, and then abhorred alive. Though now his name the multitude respects, since merging one who him had held so dear, whilst inward thoughts each outward thing reflects, some monstrous shape to Brutus must appear. Just Nemesis must plague proud Cassius soon, and make him kill himself from hopes estranged, once all the wrongs by foes to Caesar done may by themselves be on themselves revenged.
Some, sovereign of the earth, would fortune prove, as if confusedly gods did men advance, not comes to men below, but from above, by providence, not by staggering chance, though to the cause that last foregoes the end, some attribute the course of everything. That cause on other causes doth depend, which chain twixt heaven and earth do end spring, which chained twixt heaven and earth do end form forth bring, of those decrees the heavens for us anoint. Whoever them approves or doth disprove, no mortal man can disappoint a point, but as they please here moves or doth remove. We, when once come the world's vain pomp to try, led by the fates, to end our journey haste, for when first born, we straight begin to die. Life's first day is a step unto the last. And is there aught more swift than days and years, which wear away this breath of ours so soon, whilst Lachesis to no request gives ears, but spins the threads of life till they be done? Yet foolish worldlings following that which flies, as if they had assurance of their breath, to frail preferment fondly strive to rise, which, but a burden, weighs them down to death.
There's none of us but must remember still how that the gods by many a wondrous sign did show, it seemed, how that against their will the destinies would Caesar's days confine. A monstrous star amidst the heaven hath been, since they first against him did conspire, the solitary birds at noon were seen, and men to walk environed all with fire. What wonder though the heavens at such time do brave the earth with apparitions strange, then whilst intending such a monstrous crime, unnatural men make nature's course to change.
Though all such things seem wonderful to some, they may by reason comprehended be. For what, beyond what usual is, doth come, the ignorant with wondering eyes do see. Those bastard stars, not heritors of their, are first conceived below, then born above, and when foreknowing things, sprites take most care, and by illusion, superstition move. Yet this, no doubt, a great regard should breed, when nature hath brought forth a monstrous birth, in secret characters where men may read the wrath of heaven and wickedness of the earth. The naturalists and the astrologian skill may oft, encountering, manifest like care, since the one looks back, the other forward still, one may tell what, the other why things are.
Shall sorrow through the waves of woes to sail, have still your tears for seas, your sighs for winds, to misery want to base plaints avail. A course more high becomes heroic minds, none are overcome, save only those who yield from froward fortune, though some blows be borne, let virtue choose save adversity for shield. No greater grief to grief than enemy's scorn that makes your foes but laugh to see you weep. At least these tears but for yourself bestow, and not for that great spirit whose spoils heavens keep, for he, no doubt, rests deified ere now.
I only wail my life and not his death. He now amongst the immortals doth repose, and shall so long as I have blood or breath to furnish forth the elements of woes. I care not who rejoice, so I lament, and do to darkness dedicate my days. And since the light of my delight is spent, I shall have in horror all Apollo's rays. I will retire myself to wail alone as trusty turtles mourning for their mates, and my misfortune always bent to moan, will spurn at pleasures as empoisoned baits. No second guest shall press great Caesar's bed, warmed by the flames to which he first gave life. I think there may be greater honour had when Caesar's widow than another's wife. This I had afforded comfort for my harms, if I, ere chance abandoned thus to be, had had a little Caesar in mine arms, the living picture of his sire to me. Yet doth that idol which my thoughts adore with me of late most strictly matched remain. For where my arms him sometimes held before, now in my heart I shall him still retain. That, though I may no precious things impart, my deity may by me be honoured oft, still offering up my thoughts upon my heart, my sacred flame shall always mount aloft.
And they exit, leaving the chorus.
What fools are those who do repose their trust on what this mass of misery affords, and bragging but of the excrements of dust, of lifeless treasures labor to be lords, which like the siren's songs or Circe's charms, with shadows of delight hide certain harms. Ah, whilst they sport on pleasure's icy grounds, oft poisoned by prosperity with pride, a sudden storm their floating joys confounds, whose course is o'erread by the eyeless guide, who so inconstantly herself doth bear, the unhappy men may hope, the happy fear. The fortunate who bathe in floods of joy, to perish oft amidst their pleasures chance, and mirthless wretches wallowing in a noise, oft by adversity themselves advance, whilst fortune bent to mock vain worldlings' cares, doth change despairs and hopes, hopes in despairs. Their gallant Grecian, whose great wit so soon, whom others could not number, did o'ercome, had he not been undone, had been undone, and if not banished, had not had a home. To him fear courage gave, what wondrous change, and many doubts are in solution strange. He who told one who then was fortune's child, as if with horror to congeal his blood, that Caius Marius far from Rome exiled, wretched on the ruins of great Carthage stood, though long both plagued by grief and by disgrace, the consulship regained, and died in peace. And that great Pompey, all the world's delight, whom of his theatre then the applauses pleased, whilst praise transported eyes endeared his sight, who by youth's toil should have his age then eased. He by one blow of fortune lost far more than many battles gained had before. Such sudden changes so disturb the soul, that still the judgment balanced is by doubt. But on a round, what wonder though things roll? And since within a circle, turn about, whilst heaven on earth strange alterations brings, to scorn our confidence in worldly things, and chance there ever accidents more strange than in these stormy bounds where we remain. One did a sheep hook to a scepter change, the nursling of a wolf o'er men did reign. A little village grew a mighty town, which whilst it had no king, held many a crown. Then by how many sundry sorts of men hath this great state been ruled, though now by none, which first obeyed but one, then two, then 10, then by degrees returned to 2, and 1, of which 3 states their ruin did abide, 2 by 2's a lust, 2 by 2's a lusts, and 1 by 2 men's pride. What revolutions huge have happened thus, by secret fates all violently led, though seeming but by accident to us, yet in the depths of heavenly breasts first bred, as arguments demonstrative to prove that weakness dwells below and power above. Lo, prosperous Caesar charged for a space, both with strange nations and his country's spoils, even when he seemed by war to purchase peace and roses of sweet rest from thorns of toils. Then whilst his mind and fortune swelled most high, hath been constrained the last distress to try. What warnings large were in a time so short of that dark course which by his death now shines? It, speechless wonders plainly did report. It, men revealed by words, and gods by signs, yet by the chains of destinies whilst bound, he saw the sword, but could not scape the wound. What curtain o'er our knowledge error brings, now drawn, now opened, by the heavenly host, which makes us sometimes sharp to see small things, and yet quite blind when as we should see most, that curious brains may rest amazed at it, whose ignorance makes them presume of wit. Then let us live, since all things change below, when raised most high, as those who once may fall, and hold when by disasters brought more low, the mind still free, whatever else bethrall, those lords of fortune sweeten every state, who can command themselves, though not their fate.
And thus the play ends. It's an interesting way to close the play, in the sense of them sort of looking back at the death. Obviously Calphurnia, who we met earlier, but all the other characters are the chorus, whose relationship to the action is a bit weird, and messenger guy, Nuntius, who's, subtle. How doth my love? Where is my life? Dead. It's dead. Blunt. Could just soften it a bit more. Just ease into that a little bit more. It's a slightly odd way. I mean, I think it's sort of just easing us out into and closing the action and sort of commenting on it, and it's not quite as interesting as the previous scene, which was very debatey and didn't land in quite as an exciting way. But then I suppose it's probably supposed to be about thoughts in the room. How did people find it? Rachael, you were that chorus who I wasn't wholly sure at the beginning of the scene whether they were really in the room, because they were almost talking about the people in the room in the third person. It was quite strange. It's like it was strange. Rachael.
Yeah, I think with that chorus, what happens is, it seems from the way that they were talking that maybe they're a little more downstage and engaging with the audience at first, and then move into the action a little further upstage. And I think what's throwing me off about that chorus is that there's sort of that meta, breaking of the fourth wall. And then there's it's a sort of movement and playing with that fourth wall that I wasn't getting in the last scene. And then there's, maybe that has to do with the closing of the play and, just saying this, but at the same time, I don't know, I haven't been here for all of it. So I don't know, it seems like there's a little more movement instead of stillness, which we were getting in the previous act, this sort of closedness and I don't know, sort of dollhouse looking in that we had before. And now we have a sort of ambassador, which is just a little weird. It's a kind of weird movement and tone to the play that doesn't seem to be mirrored elsewhere.
Well, okay, I've just been thinking about that chorus. So the chorus talks about, describes Calphurnia taking in the news. So we've just had, Nuntius says dead and she goes dead. So I'm just wondering if actually there's just this massive pause. It's like Calphurnia just can't take it in, and that's what the chorus is describing there, and that maybe even that there's a much greater expulsion of grief coming from Calphurnia at that moment, and it's the same with that problem with the line later on where Calphurnia just goes alas, which I'm thinking if I was staging it, maybe that's not an alas, that's just a wail or something there, so that there is actually something more dynamic going on here, but just looking at the words that way doesn't actually bring it out, that there's actually potential in that scene that we're not quite getting. We should also talk about the previous scene, because of course we haven't actually stopped between the two scenes. But yeah, also we've got that previous scene of all the various major players. Is that question, that scene with Brutus and Antony and Cassius and Cicero, is that happening literally after the death? Because it feels like the way Brutus speaks, he's just turned to the Senate and gone, hi guys, yeah, sorry about the stabby thing, don't run away, no, listen to what I've got to say next. It doesn't have to be that way. It could actually just be a little later on, which is sort of more historically accurate. I don't quite know that they had this kind of meeting, but a little bit after. I'm fairly certain that I'm not sure where Cicero was precisely at this point. I think I don't think he hung around. I think Antony turned up and they had some kind of vague messengered meeting. I'm not sure how that all worked. I'm not sure how that worked in history. But anyway, there's potential there, and it's a really interesting sort of various major players sort of sidling round each other and not necessarily saying what they're really thinking to each other, but they're sort of having different things. Sorry, I whittled on for ages there. Eric, I think, was waving earlier, and then Rachael.
I was just going to mention that it's basically for Calphurnia, it's like she kind of just, after the sort of had he but believed my faithful cares and stayed at home, basically. After that speech, she kind of goes into this sort of, I'm not crying about him, I'm crying for myself, because basically things can get worse. I think like her character is very interesting, even though she appears like just in two scenes. Because she kind of goes, I will retire myself to wail alone, and then sort of but she's wailing like both for him and her in a way. It's just because I mean, as we've seen from like the wounds of civil war, people who get left behind, especially women, are not treated very well. So it's kind of like she must feel very safe to not be running off immediately and trying to book a ship or something to run off to the safest place she can.
Yeah, and you were saying she's only in two scenes, but actually that's not a bad number for this play, actually, because a lot of people are not in more than much more than two scenes. Caesar's only in two scenes. I think Antony's only in two scenes, and he doesn't do it. So actually, the women characters in this play don't do too badly in terms of overall balance. I mean, it's still quite male-y, but if you include Juno, then there's quite a lot of text in this that is given over to the the three female characters in the play, which is not always the kind of percentage you actually get. Rachael.
Yeah, I was also gonna say about the scene before with like all the other people, that it's the sort of undermining that Julius Caesar has done to the Republic, that by going as far as he's gone, the people trying to undo him have also gone to extremes. And to take somebody down who's undoing the Republic, they undermine it themselves with murder. And that scene where having it be private, the conspirators having it private, it's taking, public offices into back rooms and making them private in a way, which is what Caesar's doing. He's usurping public offices and taking them into himself and making them private. The treasury, these lower level officials whose positions he's absorbing. And it shows maybe the chorus is interesting in that way, because they're depending on how a production wanted to cast them, because they could either be the public or they could be private individuals in either servants or other politicians, the handmaidens of, or they could change depending on which chorus they are for which act, to say something. But I think that's sort of interesting. And then the way it goes into Calphurnia in the end and how helpless she feels without Caesar. It's like Eric said, the wounds of civil war, where it's like, where do you go from here with the undermining of the state? Because the state must feel as helpless as a widow who needs to rely on these people, because the public, the people in this republic, relied on these officials, and on all sides they've undermined the republic and let them down and left them in a position of not really being able to do anything or go anywhere. And there's a feeling of helplessness or grief, and there's this combination of personal and personal/private grief and public grief of these people who held public positions but had a lot of private connections.
Yeah, no, it's following on from what I said at the very top of the video, following on from Eric's point about the every new character we meet is a slightly lower status. I mean, Calphurnia slightly creates a bit of a kink in that, because she's married to Caesar, but the next character we meet, who's new, we go down to the messenger, but also just following on from Rachel's thought there of who are the chorus? Who are they? Beyond they're some Romans. What is their status? Are they senators? Are they different each time? They feel like they're the same chorus throughout, but they do also vaguely comment immediately after Juno appears, so goodness only knows who that chorus could be, depending on things. And they do get involved in the scenes. They are in these scenes, so they have to be here. So who are they? And that's something that a production kind of needs to make a decision on. And I don't think this text does. I don't think this text has given us any solid data as to who they are supposed to be in relation to the other characters. That's sort of why I was looking at that chorus in the final act as being, or that final scene, as almost not being in the room, like they're just commenting from here. They're a voiceover, the voice of God. But they do then start interacting, so that line was clearly not right. But yeah. Anyway, we are well past extra time. So any final thoughts? Desna, do you have anything to throw in?
No, just kind of processing the final scene and Calphurnia's kind of reaction to everything, and feeling slightly dissatisfied that it's ending in this way, although I don't know what a better ending would be. once Caesar's been murdered.
Yeah, it is a tricky thing because in a sense you're left with uncertainty. With the scene before, we have these power wielding people sort of saying, yeah, it'll be fine. I think it's an important scene to say that the scene before is all lies and it's all going to fall apart very, very quickly. And I think the idea behind the scene is right. I think actually if we dug into it, it can work. I just don't think it quite worked on a first read. I think we didn't. I think you need to go for the emotion of it more than perhaps we did because we're doing a cold read. We're just sort of going for it. And I think between the Nuntius and Calphurnia, that they're both actually perhaps feeding off each other. That there's something there. It may not be there in the dialogue. It may be William's just gone off the boil a bit, which happens. Sorry, Desna.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it may not be. It may just be the scene just doesn't quite work. It may be that. Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just looking at this play from the beginning to the end is like it feels very quick. I don't know if that's just me, like sort of compared to other stuff that we've read that just seems labored. Neoclassical stuff. I mean, especially by Alexander. It just, I don't know, it flowed really well and it seems very sort of natural, almost sort of, okay, aside from the chorus, which obviously would not exist in a real life situation, you'd have like maybe bystanders and so on. But yeah, it just seems sort of like you can, well, minus Juno, you could sort of make this play a lot, you could do a lot with this play, especially sort of, yeah, it has potential, I think.
Yeah, and I was talking earlier about how a lot of these scenes all feel like they're happening at the same time, and because it is actually a very tight time period. Everything pretty much happens in the course of a day. A lot of it happening overnight. It feels very naturally compact, and I mean it's not a short play by any stretch of the imagination. But I think you're right. You get into it and it flows really well, and you can make decisions about how you cut it. You could skip Juno at the beginning and go straight into the action. But then as you were saying earlier, there is a thematic connection with that, and it's actually quite a nice. It's a really good speech, the Juno speech at the beginning of the play. So there's lots of options about what you do with it in terms of how you cut it, whether you play around with its structure. I think it's as ever with any neoclassical work, there's a lot of text and there's a lot to take in. So how you sculpt a theatrical performance is harder than, say, if you do it episodically, as Tom pointed out the other day. Because I think you can go maximalist or you can go minimalist on this. I think you can cut it quite a lot, or you can, do it in the right medium. You could leave it a lot of it intact. Because again, most of the time he does some good stuff with the verse. Actually, Rachael, any final thoughts?
What Eric said, that for what I've been here for, it really has ticked by. I was surprised how much time had gone by, because as we were doing it, it didn't seem like it was that long. It seemed a lot shorter than it was. And I mean that in a good way, because it was very interesting. And compared to other stuff that William Alexander's done, this was really, I don't know, this was so much more dynamic and coherent in a certain way. Not that I disliked the other stuff that he did, but this is very much like more mature than some of the other stuff that we've gotten to read by him, which makes sense for that it came later. I'm interested in coming back to this one because it's there's stuff here, and like you said, that there might be stuff that didn't come across on a first read, on a cold read. So I don't know, there was probably more that I wanted to say, but I've already said a bunch and now I can't remember it all. But I'm interested in coming back to this because I do think it ticks by, and I do think it's maybe more actable than I think it is actable, and I think there is stuff that a production could work with here.
And of course, the advantage is that we've got other Roman plays that orbit this, so you can think of it, as a series of material that could also be nicked or moved around from other places as well. So obviously we can go on to Octavia, we can go on to Antony, we can go on to Cleopatra, and we can go earlier. So yeah, the building an interest in this sort of pays off, because then you can go on to other texts and you can compare and contrast and you can play around in. And I think it helps that this one we know the story. I didn't really know the story of what came after Alexander the Great's death. I knew it was messy, but it's not like it's a play where I'm going, oh, and now this is going to happen, ha ha ha. Whereas here, I know the story pretty well, and it's following that story. So it's that thing of leaning into something where it's how they do it rather than what's happening is what's interesting. Rachael, very briefly.
Yeah, I think because this is a story that I think people are more familiar with, that it's maybe more sellable for that reason, because I don't know, it's Rome, wasn't there a show a couple years ago, like from HBO or Stars or something, called
HBO's
Rome?
Yep.
Yeah, people love like that blood and gore and things like that, and the whole intrigue and the I don't know, sort of legend of Julius Caesar that exists in the pop culture mindset for the past, since he's been dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they covered it. Why not us? Yeah, we probably have less sex though, less sex and violence. I don't think that's in William Alexander's skill set. But that's it for William Alexander. We've now read all of his extant works. There are textual variations and additional material that we haven't done for some of them, but broadly speaking, we've done the lot. And yeah, much to some people's surprise, a lot more got out of it than expected. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers who are still here for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. No corpulent sanguinians make me fear.